Konnichiwa, Pakusetachi. I'm Puppy-Sensei, the puppy girl Japanese teacher VTuber who makes Japanese language content to help you level up your abilities. Today's little grammar lesson is going to be pretty basic, and that's probably a good thing, all things considered. I'm here trying to put the wheels back on my cart after getting very, very sick.
Out the door, you see someone that you know and they ask you how you are, and you just have to say that you're fine.
And you're here, well, hopefully you're here because you want to learn a bit more about the Japanese language. So today we're going to cover the idea of ga arimasu. Ga arimasu. So here it is. Basically, ga arimasu follows a noun to say that something is, something exists, or in some cases, you have something. Okay? When we think about the very basic Japanese sentences, often in your very first few Japanese as a foreign language classes, if you happen to be an L2 learner, you might have been taught that there are two super basic Japanese sentence structures and you need to learn them very early, okay? Namely, those kind of so-called basic Japanese structures are the X wa y des sentence and the X ga arimasu sentence. Plenty of people talk about the Japanese language in this way. Heck, I've made this claim on this very channel. And there's really nothing wrong with that claim, right? These are the two kind of very basic Japanese sentence structures. But really, I start to ask myself a question, and maybe you will too. What does basic sentence structure really mean? What is that? I think that makes sense, maybe from a language learning perspective, okay? These are two types of sentences that really help you build the foundations of everything else that you're going to need to know. It's like math. You're really going to have a hard time learning how exponents work if you don't understand addition. You have to learn some of the basics first before you can move on and learn subtraction and multiplication, and then eventually matrices and graphing. But I think this idea of a basic sentence structure from the perspective of language, of just pure language, of just the way that people talk to one another. If you walked up to someone on the street and said, "What's the basic sentence structure?" What are they going to say? Like it doesn't really make any sense. Let me ask this in a different way. In English, what is our basic sentence structure? What is that? What does that mean? If we think about it in Japanese, as an example of a very simple X wa y des sentence, here we have kore wa noto desu. Kore wa noto desu. This is a notebook. Okay? And we can see a corollary sentence in the ga arimasu form, which is going to look like this. Noto ga arimasu. Noto ga arimasu. I have a notebook. We have kore wa noto desu. This is a notebook, and we have noto ga arimasu. Okay? Noto ga arimasu can also mean something like a notebook exists. But ordinarily, when we translate it, noto ga arimasu, I have a notebook. I've got a notebook. I do want you to keep in mind that ga arimasu can only be used for non-living nouns. Like notebook here is non-living, and that's why we're able to use ga arimasu. But at the risk of belaboring the point too much, we have these two basic, quote-unquote, basic sentences, basic Japanese sentence structures, and they translate to, this is a notebook, and I have a notebook. The point that I want to make is, how often are you really using this kind of sentence in English? Are you, generally speaking, walking around pointing to various things in your day-to-day life, simply identifying them for what they are?
I got a cup. I got a cup.
You're probably not doing that. You're probably not doing that. Because another way to think about a basic sentence structure in any language is baby talk. No judgment to all the babies out there who are watching and hoping to learn Japanese, but language is complex. It's unpredictable. It can sometimes be weird. Yes, we do need to learn the very basic sentence structures when we're first learning a language, because basic sentence structures are the building blocks from which we're going to gain a more robust grammar and vocabulary. But a basic sentence like kapu ga arimasu is honestly barely better than babbling when we compare it to the full range of an entire language. So all that is to say, yes, we need the ga arimasu grammar point, but actually, I would really caution you away from thinking, aha, ga arimasu is one of the 2 basic Japanese sentence types, and that means that I'm going to be hearing it all the time when I watch anime or have conversations with Japanese people. You might. You probably won't. Let's look at some example sentences that probably help illustrate this exact point. Okay, here's our first sentence. 日本語でたくさん文法があります。日本語でたくさん文法があります。Japanese has a lot of grammar. Do you feel that that's true? I think it sometimes does seem like there are just so many grammar points in Japanese. And also, those grammar points can sometimes have relatively complex rules. But you know, that's true of lots of languages. Namely, heckin' English. English is a very complex language with very complex grammar that breaks its own rules all the time. Okay, but anyway, here's our sentence, right? Nihongo de, in the Japanese language, takusan bunpo, a lot of grammar, ga arimasu, there is or there are. Now, I want to do something here, actually. So, check this out, okay? We know how ga arimasu works. Ga arimasu follows a noun or a noun phrase, and it expresses the existence of something. I mean, I want to specify that it expresses the existence of something inanimate. And grammar isn't alive from the perspective of the Japanese language. But yeah, so we can take our sentence, right? If we take off the front part of the sentence, we remove the Nihongo de takusan, and we leave only bunpo ga arimasu, we are left with a sentence that just means grammar exists. Bunpo ga arimasu. And the sentence grammar exists in both English and in Japanese is semantically pointless. It doesn't tell us anything. Tell me, if you would, in what situation you would ever need to express grammar exists. It is, to borrow a phrase, self-evident. It's like saying water exists. Yep, it sure does. Space exists. Okay, absolutely. Right? And this is what I was talking about before when I was going off on that long tangent about how ga arimasu sentences are both one of the basic sentences in Japanese, but also surprisingly not all that common in Japanese. Yes, you need to understand what ga arimasu is doing, because if you don't understand how ga arimasu works, then you're never going to understand a sentence like Nihongo de takusan bunpo ga arimasu. And that isn't an uncommon sentence type. This is why I think, despite it being quite basic, ga arimasu can actually be so versatile that it causes problems for newer language learners. Let's look at a couple more sentences, okay? So, this sentence is, Uchi de akai kuruma ga arimasu. Uchi de akai kuruma ga arimasu. At home, I have a red car. Uchi de, at home, in my home, or even just in my life. Akai kuruma, red car. Ga arimasu, exists. Or, I have. Easy. It's pretty simple. This sentence makes sense, and our translation of ga arimasu as I've got or I have also makes sense. And it's semantically robust. I'm not saying cars exist, which, okay, like, take me up on this challenge. Go to any dinner party and loudly proclaim to everyone there, were you all aware that cars exist in this world? People are going to look at you like you have 7 heads. But if you say the sentence, I have a red car, okay, we are actually using language here. You see? You're adding to the conversation. You're telling somebody something that maybe isn't self-evident. Maybe people didn't know that you had a red car. So you're participating in the party. Supposedly. Now, let's look at another example, okay? この辺にカフェがあります。この辺にカフェがあります。Somewhere around here, there is a cafe. In other words, a cafe exists around here. So we're saying この辺に, in this area, in these surroundings, cafe, a cafe, があります exists. It exists somewhere around here. This sentence is also semantically robust. Still, we have no problems here. But we're translating があります quite differently from our previous sentence. In our first sentence, we used I have. I have a red car at home. But in our second sentence, the vibe is much more it exists. The cafe exists. Where does it exist? Somewhere around here. We're talking about a specific cafe, and we're saying that it exists. Yeah. So it's the same grammar pattern, and it's the same conjugation, but it's a slightly different nuance. And that's okay, because that's just what ga arimasu does in Japanese. And while this isn't exactly the point of today's lesson, I do think that it's important for us to take note of the fact that ga arimasu is, as I've said before, only used for non-living objects. We don't use ga arimasu for things that are not animate, that cannot move around on their own, right? Ga arimasu would be used for things like trees and cars and rocks and rivers, because those things are inanimate. They can't get up and walk around of their own accord. We would not use ga arimasu for people or bears or birds, because those things are animate. They can get up and move of their own accord. If we wanted to construct similar sentences to the ones above, then we need to switch to ga imasu instead of ga arimasu. So let's quickly do that for today, okay? So first sentence, うちで小さい猫がいます。うちで小さい猫がいます。I've got a little kitty at home. Notice we haven't changed really all that much from the previous sentence, right? So we're still saying うちで, in my house, in my life, in my immediate environment, whatever it is, right? 小さい, small, neko, cat, ga imasu, exists. I have a little cat. Okay? And then our second sentence is この辺にバリスタがいます。この辺にバリスタがいます。ね? There is a barista around here. I call her Latte Hate. But again, we haven't changed anything from the previous sentence. Really, we've only changed the object that exists, the barista, and we've had to go from ga arimasu to ga imasu because we're now talking about a living thing, namely some barista that ostensibly works at a cafe. Maybe it's the same cafe that we were talking about in the previous sentence. So we have kono hen ni in this area, barista ga imasu, a barista exists. In the case of these sentences, ga imasu is functioning exactly the same way as it was with the ga arimasu sentences. Same nuance, same everything. Just in this case, it's identifying living objects rather than non-living objects, right? Okay, let me quickly shift gears a little bit. I want to tell you about my intentions for next week. My intention for next week is to try to teach you some verb conjugations as an extension of today's lesson. My hope is that I can start showing you how we can kind of massage things using conjugation, like in the case of ga arimasu and ga imasu, to make more complex sentence structures, and how we can use those patterns as aspects of other grammar as well to, well, to say more, to make more than just baby talk sentences, right? We want to use ga arimasu and ga imasu to make real sentences in Japanese. That's the goal, and that's what I would like to do next week. But I also want to be realistic. While it is my hope that we can get a lesson out next week on this topic, genuinely, I really, really hope that I can do that. I think that that's kind of the bare minimum that I'm hoping that I can do. I also have to really be straightforward, and I have to say that my health is not good right now. I'm going through a lot, and I'm trying to make some decisions about what I'm going to do, and some of those decisions are pretty difficult for me. So I don't know genuinely if I can get something out next week, and if I can't, I ask that you please be patient with me as I try to determine what my future is going to look like. So, 本当にありがとうございます。もう申し訳ございませんでした。I'm so sorry, but also thank you for your patience, and I'm going to take care of myself, and you please take care of yourselves as well. It's a holiday in America, so don't eat too much, I suppose, and I hope that your stuffing is extra soggy. I don't know. I'm just going to be eating cranberry sauce from the can, so I'll see you soon. Mata raishu! I hope.